Our next guest is on the west coast of the US, but is from Miami herself. She comes to us through our co-host, OneTable. Welcome, Ely. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting me to join you today for this special program. I've really enjoyed hearing from all of the speakers so far. So my name is Ely Benhamo, and I work for OneTable as their National Director of Major Gifts. OneTable is a nonprofit that empowers Jewish young adults in the United States to become leaders and build community through hosting Shabbat dinners in their homes. And the Shabbat dinner table was really the place where all of my cultures came together. I'm a first-generation American. My family is Israeli, Moroccan, and Spanish on my Abba's side, Cuban, Venezuelan, and also Spanish on my mom's. And our chosen family, the family that we did all of the holidays with, are from Yemen, Iran, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Israel. My Saba and Safta left a lot of our family history in Morocco when they made Aliyah to Israel, but they always stayed very culturally and ritually connected. I grew up in a part of Miami where most of my friends were not Jewish, or they were Ashkenazi and had no exposure to the Mizrahi traditions like my family has. So at 12 years old, I threw an epic Moroccan-themed bat mitzvah party in Miami with henna and hookah and belly dancing and even fake camels. It was amazing, but for years following my bat mitzvah, I didn't really go out of my way to explore my Mizrahi heritage until I became a young professional. When I moved to San Francisco, I began living in a Moishe house, and I began hosting events for the young adult community. I started realizing that some of the Jewish rituals that I grew up doing were not as widespread among the greater Jewish community as I thought that they were, like wearing white on the high holidays. And I began learning about other people's traditions that they grew up with, like singing tunes I hadn't heard to songs that I already knew, and using different ingredients in their haroset. I wanted to celebrate that. So in 2019, I planned an annual global Passover traditions event where I researched ancient and modern Passover traditions observed throughout the world, and I showcased them to my community through stories and games. Later that year, I was invited to participate in a Jewish leadership mission to Morocco with JDC and Twine, also known as the Joint. This was the first time that I was able to visit Morocco and start piecing together some of the stories that I had heard from my Abba, from my family in Israel, and things that I had only seen pictures of growing up. I knew I had friends back home who were interested and shared this curiosity with me. So I decided to document my journey on social media, specifically on Instagram. Each day, I shared pictures and videos of the different historic sites that we had visited, like the synagogues that had been there for hundreds of years, and street names that were recently recovered with Hebrew letters. I shared conversations that I had with locals, the history that I was learning, and things I was uncovering about my family's time there. So many people followed me on this virtual, personal homecoming journey, and it was really quite an interactive experience. I then had the opportunity to fly directly, well, not really directly. Now they have direct flights, but I was able to fly from Morocco to Israel with a stopover and visited my family in Israel. It was so powerful to share these pictures and stories in real time, while also participating in a Torah dedication ceremony that my Savta had coordinated in memory of my father and grandfather. This Torah was being welcomed into their small neighborhood Moroccan synagogue in Israel, in Rishon LeZion, that my family has been praying at for nearly 70 years. Just a few months after I returned from this trip, the world shut down because of the pandemic. I went back to my childhood home in Miami for the beginning of quarantine, and Passover was the first real Jewish holiday that we celebrated in lockdown. I wanted to do something special for Mimuna since I had really come to love and appreciate this ending of Passover tradition after learning more about it from locals in Morocco. In addition to keeping up with my Global Passover Traditions event and hosting it that year over Zoom, my mom and I decided to invite people into our home virtually over Instagram for Mimuna. We had about 70 people join us on Instagram, and we walked them through the process of making mafleta, setting the table with all of the traditional foods for Mimuna, like the nuts and the jams and the dates. And a few months later, I got back to San Francisco and I was asked to co-host a Mizrahi Remembrance Month Shabbat with OneTable, Moishe House, and Jemena. I co-hosted this event with my fellow Moroccan friend, Zach, on Zoom. Zach and I are both Moishe House residents who are regularly hosting Shabbat dinners with OneTable, the Jewish nonprofit that I now work for. I didn't work for them at the time. And we had about 45 people join us from across the country for what was a very special virtual Mizrahi Shabbat dinner, where we shared stories about our personal family heritage, traditional foods, and we even dressed in our favorite kaftans. Most importantly, we invited our guests to share any stories about their traditions if they too identified as Mizrahi. We had so many people telling incredible stories and sharing pictures. It was really quite fascinating. One man even had a traditional instrument that he used to play tunes for us from different Arab countries. And some people even showed us some family heirlooms that they had in their house. Because we were virtual, everybody was in their own space, so they were able to actually bring their things with them to the screen and share them with everyone. The common threads between all of the experiences that I just shared with you are definitely the food, the community, and the storytelling. And even though the methods I and my community used to gather and deliver these stories changed over time, each of them were incredibly powerful. And through them, I've personally been able to reclaim my heritage, especially over the last few years. So I thank you for giving me this opportunity to share a little bit about my story and also to hear from so many others today.
Thank you so much, Ely. It was so much bigger and broader and actually inspiring. So I hope that everybody takes just a little bit of that back to their own communities and really shares like you do. Chazak u'baruch. Really continue with what you do. Very impressive. Thank you. And hopefully we'll have you back for other programs as well.